AMaGA Victoria respectfully acknowledges the first people of the land on which we make this podcast, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. We would like to acknowledge that museums, galleries, and other arts and cultural organisations within Victoria sit on unceded lands. This is Closer Look, a podcast by AMaGA Victoria. I'm Maria Pia Dunne.
And I'm Cav P.
Coming to a space like this, I feel, closer to ancestors. I feel closer to family, to heritage. And I didn't really expect that I would be able to experience that in a museum.
Bulavinaka and buongiorno to all. In our special two-parter for Closer Look, Maria and I have been exploring Victorian museum spaces that share and pay tribute to each of our family's cultural heritage. In the second part, we're paying a visit to the Te Pasifika Gallery in Melbourne Museum to share my own connection with Fiji and learn from longtime contributor to the gallery, Sione Napi Francis, and current curator Jade Hadfield about how the space was designed by and for Pasifika diaspora to help keep them connected with their ancestors across the ocean. Ready to come sail with me, Maria?
I don't think that we'll be getting our toes wet much in the museum, Cav, but I appreciate the enthusiasm.
So here we are in the space of the Te Pasifika Gallery, currently very different from its usual form, as we see that it's down for repairs.
I never noticed how tall it is, I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but the fact that, you look up and see the boats.
What I was told when I first came here was that there's this ramp that you can take to go up to the second story. And the idea is that when you're on that ramp, you're at the top of the water. So you're at the boat level.
Oh,
but when you're down here, you're basically underneath the water.
The term Pasifika can have a few meanings depending on context, but generally speaking, it refers to the diverse communities of people in the South Pacific Islands, as well as their diaspora living abroad. The Te Pasifika Gallery lies in a nook in Melbourne Museum, just behind the Bundjalaka Aboriginal Cultural Centre area. Redeveloped in 2020 to better centre the voices of the Melbourne Pasifika community, it's currently closed for further renovation work. Fortunately, we were allowed into the space for the purpose of this podcast and had some great discussions inspired by the huge potential of the space.
O siota ofa, Nisa Bulavinaka, Warm Pacific greetings. Yeah, my name is Sione Napi Francis. I'm a Tongan-born Tongan Australian, and my background is in the museum sector and art sector.
I'm Jade Hadfield. I'm Ngāti Kahungunu and Ngāti Whātua from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I've been in for 15 years now. My role here at Museums Victoria is the curator of the Moana Wansawara collection, so the Pacific collection.
The Te Pasifika Gallery was the first kind of embodiment of that ideal that we are more than pretty skirts and Hawaiian songs. We've got so much more to offer. We're very diverse, but we have so much more connections, similarities than differences. And the Te Pasifika Gallery joined those concepts together.
This gallery is for, Pacifica community and those ancestral ties, that kinship that we have, so it's not just my immediate family, but the place is here for all of us to come and be connected to as well. My whole intention is to activate it, to bring community in.
We had a revitalisation of the space called Tok Story Vikitolia Pasifiki, which is the voices of our Pacific community here in Nam. And through that experience, I was able to really include my family, my parents, cousins, aunties, uncles, and that we all were part of that gallery and its evolution as it's moved through the last 20-odd years. When Tok Story opened, we did about 10 tours with my parents. My children came along to at least 3 of those. We brought through groups of all the different island nations that we'd been working with and various community groups as well. And I suppose what it did was it created a new dialogue with the space and a new understanding of what it meant to be Pacifica in Melbourne.
Because we're part of the diaspora, my children grew up here. This space and the opportunities here is an opportunity for them to connect with their culture, particularly here, and also the collection. This is their place where they can be connected to their ancestors. Being away from home, it's it's important for us to be able to connect to our ancestors, to our traditional knowledge. It's all within the collection. Yeah, like spiritually and physically.
I've never spent time looking at a map of like Pasifika nations,
Right. I mean, normally the islands are so small that they're little dots on the map and they barely even get named. Whereas here we've actually got them all named out. So it's a really surprisingly rare opportunity just to see these islands being privileged on a world map.
I find it also interesting in the sense that, like we were last in the Museo Italiano, right, where it had a map.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to get a scope and to get an understanding of space and of culture.
One thing that's really great about this space is sort of the central theme of the ocean being, the great connector of all of these different cultures. So many different islands, so many different cultures, but we're all connected to the ocean, to Moana.
Some of the key themes are not just the ocean, but it's how we traverse the ocean, where we came from, and the journey of migration over 6,000 years ago to 20,000 years ago. And it's shored up through spoken word, through stories that have been handed down. The stars which guide you to all the various destinations that connect us across Oceania are still in the stars and are known. Even though they're not used in Tonga anymore, we know those connections and we know the terms of reference for our connections. And I think that's where the Te Pasifika Gallery comes in. It creates a space where you can understand the terms of reference of your connections across the Moana Oceania, how we relate. And it gives you a real sense of power and pride in that connection.
Something that I've noticed is there's so many quotes, as in people's first-hand accounts and like their points of view are so much at the forefront.
I really like that. It makes me feel more connected to, the community of Pasifika peoples. It's really nice. It sort of feels like you're walking among family. Even though we're all from different islands, we have different contexts. These are people who are connected to me in some way.
So the word family was translated into famili in Tongan, but it connects us to the whanua, or the earth that we have. So there's this concept of wrapping yourself in your country. You've got this kafa or belt that we put on over our ta'uvala that binds us to our land, and it binds us to our family or whānau. So I really like the word family and pulling it apart, looking at all the different versions of what family is and how in a Western concept it's like a nuclear family of 4 people. But in the Tongan context, it includes your extended family, your cousins. Cousins are like brothers, sisters, and then your nieces are like your children, and so on. It's a much, much broader concept that engages you with the community and your history and your ancestors and your land and your sea, your stories, your titles, all of those things. So I think, to really pull apart what a family is important. It's a good way to kind of get into deep, like really invest and pull apart what that means in terms of a Pasifika context.
When I entered the Te Pasifika Gallery space, and you showed me around that one time, I felt connected to a family that I didn't know existed. This broader oceanic lens of a family. It was a very transformative experience for me.
So, Cav, we're in this exhibition space. How can you tell an exhibition is more connected and less othering?
I mean, it's about who is doing the talking, right? And as you mentioned, there's so many quotes from Pasifika people in here who are actually telling you about these things. It's not the voice of some bodiless, nameless curator. All these people have names, they're quoted and then their name is listed. So you know who said it, you know what their context is. And it's so diverse as well. You know that this is one person's opinion. You're not being told a fact about a blanket statement about the Pacific communities. You're getting this person's perspective about their personal experience. And it makes such a huge difference just to have this, mixture of different voices making up this exhibition, as opposed to one person telling you this is what the blah blah people used in the past tense, as if we're all dead. Which unfortunately is very common in a lot of spaces.
I ended up working in museums after going on an investigatory tour of Europe in the early 90s, and was inspired by the lack of representation of Pasifika in museums. It made me feel small. And I thought, we are so much more than that. We are the ocean, we are the stars. And that was like a calling for me to correct that, particularly in Melbourne, where I was living and still live. That's the power that museums can have to offer an experience that connects communities to their heritage. Or it can have the opposite effect. There's a real need to reflect the living culture, the living communities of Moana Oceania, and now need to be seen, and for our methodologies and ways to be acknowledged in the museum sector, in politics, social sciences. And I think museums are uniquely placed for that.
What are your future plans for this site and this gallery space once it reopens?
Originally, I worked here 2018 till 2021, where we started to undertake a redevelopment. We didn't get to complete the redevelopment at that time and hope to pick that up in the future. My priority is just reconnecting with people. And in terms of the space, it's bringing them in. So I want to activate it with them. At the moment, we have the waka or the canoes that are on display. What we want to do is we're keen to actually have a community-led conservation project where they're working with the waka. So people from where the waka are from to work with these canoe, could be like things like lashing techniques, all of this knowledge that many people have. So it's us working across like both traditional knowledge, but then also museum practice. Yeah, but really it's like bringing people in. It's our space and it should be used for that.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your time and insights today.
A conversation has a beginning, middle, and end.
Yes.
And it's about acknowledging the talanoa we've had. That we had a conversation. It wasn't just an interview. It's a talanoa, big talk. And it's about sharing those values in an open and safe way. And I think we definitely achieved that in this conversation. And I hope that we can continue it in some way.
And that just about wraps it up for today. The Te Pasifika Gallery is currently closed for renovation. It's housed in Melbourne Museum, which is open daily from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We hope you'll look forward to the big reopening so you can see this beautiful site for yourself. Pinaka Vakalevu for listening, and we'll see you next time on Closer Look.